Welcome to Volume 11 Rock Talk Podcast, brought to you by Volume 11 Music. Your hosts, Rich Hoffa, Rick Lawhorn, and Mark Dunn. Rock Talk, Volume 11 Music.
Hey, it's Rock Talk here at Volume 11 Music in Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Rock
I'm Rich.
Rick Lawhorn.
That's Rich Hoffa.
Rich
Say your
Hoffa.
whole
Rich
name.
Hoffa.
Hoffa or
yeah,
Haffa?
it's Rich Hoffa.
Mark Dunn.
Rich Hoffa, yeah.
I feel like I'm in Jerry.
Mark
Rich Haffa.
Dunn. Mark Dunn.
Radio voice.
Mark Dunn. Mark Dunn.
Thursday.
Rock Talk.
Saturday.
Right here. Volume 11.
Well, today we're going to talk about, we all got into music in the 80s, of course. You guys know that if you watch the channel. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the game has changed. I mean, how being in a band has changed. The venues have changed, from back then to now. And, of course, equipment's changed. The whole 9 yards has changed. And, I'll let you guys start it off. How about you, Mark? What was it like when you started as far as your rock band?
Well, when I started, I made $500 a night, and now I've gone all the way up to $200.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of humor in that because a lot has changed over time. My first professional gig was right out of high school, right before I started at Old Dominion. I played on the Spirit of Norfolk cruise ship that went out every night.
Wow.
And that was a house gig. So meaning that that's your job. You go there, you play while you're out on, and house gigs seem to have gone away except for really high profile house gigs like at the Grand Ole Opry or a destination like our friend Keith Horns down in Florida now. He's playing at the Sun something Opry or something, Sunshine Opry or something. So those kind of gigs seem gone. But other than that, the main differences are, I think that there are way more venues. It almost feels like you could walk into, Chuck E. Cheese and see a band playing. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's the biggest difference from the 80s. So many places have music now.
Yeah, right.
And it used to not be that way. It was very exclusive to be a solo acoustic guy or a duo or a band. And there was a level of exclusivity and stature to get into a music venue because they weren't a dime a dozen, especially down at the beach. They were very competitive, and there just didn't seem like there were that many bands.
Yeah.
And now, good God, there is a band on every block, and the venues of the most unassuming places seem to have live music now, which is cool. And the last thing on that is more venues have their own sound systems now, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I definitely will agree with you on that. I'll piggyback on that for a second. I remember, I know we talked about this before, but the old days, gigantic PA systems. We got to bring in, speakers this big, and the amplifiers have to be that big, and you got to bring all that stuff in there, And now, like you said, Mark, you do have a lot of places where they've already got the sound system and their mic and everything, so you don't have to bring, massive amounts of
Yes,
stats.
you do.
Well, you.
This is Volume 11.
Volume 11, that's right, guys. 11. We have Marshalls at
Turn
11.
Turn it up. Yeah.
No, you're right. And the lights too.
The light, yeah.
They're definitely not as hot as they used to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've experienced this yet or not. But they make my dots invisible.
Oh no.
The LED lights.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like you can only laugh.
Yeah.
And it depends. It's the way the light emits, and it's in the shadows. Mm-hmm. Whereas, real light bulbs with the PARs, you could see through the dot. You know what I mean? You can see everything on screen.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing that kind of bugs me. Yes, the dots are important.
Dots.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, I started, of course, off in the 80s, and then, it was of course the big, we were in rock bands, so it was, the bands that were getting really big then were, you know, Motley Crue and Poison and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, when you're putting together a band, you know, it's like, okay, what are we going to call the band, the music we're going to play, what kind of look are we going to have? You had to be able to play, put on a stage show, you know, the whole 9 yards and stuff, and then you show up at these different clubs, and some of them had PA, some of them didn't, but I remember, you know, gosh, you get into a gig, and, you know, when you're carting all the equipment, you're getting there early afternoon, and you're setting up all this stuff and doing sound check and hanging lights and stuff, and you might get there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to do sound check at 6, and then you don't go on till 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Especially if you're headlining.
And then you don't pick up your $50 till 4 in the morning.
Well, if you didn't owe them money at the end.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Sometimes
you know, it's when they taking advantage of you. Oh, we'll give you a complimentary case of Pabst Blue Ribbon, you know, or something like that. But you know, it really changed. Of course, there was, you know, bigger rock clubs. There was more of a concert atmosphere and things like that. And then, of course, your regular dance clubs and stuff. And I think, of course, I've been out of it for a really long time. And when I first opened the shop, they goes, "There's nowhere to play." I think there's a lot of places to play. It's just different now. So you're playing breweries. You're playing, you know, a lot of you guys play a lot of outdoor gigs.
We do.
I mean, it's mostly outdoors.
Yeah.
Now and then, of course, you guys do, you know, the animal clubs and stuff like that, and you know, Mark does the solo stuff. But I think
Animal clubs.
Yeah, the Eagles.
I got you. I was like,
and all that stuff. But, Animal Crackers.
wait a minute, what are we talking about?
Yeah. But
I don't
yeah.
recall having played in Tijuana.
Yeah. I know. But I don't know. That's the biggest thing I noticed. And there's a lot of solo gigs, like Mark said. There's somebody with an acoustic guitar somewhere, everywhere. But I think just the equipment in general has gotten so much smaller.
Yeah.
It's like you had to have a half stack back then. Now you don't. And
yes, you do.
And you do. Well, it sounds better. It sounds better instead of taking the digital stuff, but. But
I know a lot of guitar players that, so back in the old days, it was like everybody had the big amps, but now it's like, I don't even use an amp. I go into a computer module, it goes right into the PA, and there's a lot of that happening, which is definitely a difference from 1988.
Yeah, I know. But doesn't sound as good.
It's I mean, I was on a Facebook forum yesterday, and somebody was asking about modelers, and they have a spot. You can take a modeler, and a lot of the bands, especially in the country bands that are out, the bigger country bands, those guys are all playing through modelers, and their sound check is 20 minutes. The only thing they're miking is drums and vocals.
Yeah.
And when you think about the time saved on a tour of 20,000 seat amphitheaters every night, that's valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that modelers are like CGI for guitar tone, and some of them really do a good job, and some of them are Star Wars Attack of the Clones.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Great analogy.
It's CGI for guitar.
Yeah, no, that's
hitting
the nail on the head.
There's just a certain level of, I've got some fly dates coming up next year, and I'm gonna have to have one. Mm-hmm. And I do say that as though I'm getting ready to take some medicine that tastes terrible, because it's not the same as having an amp.
No, it's not. Well, and that's the thing too. And I think you brought this up, like going to a concert. I mean, of course, back then, the cabinets and stuff, especially the PA, they move air, but they also move the ground.
They were warmer.
And I tell you,
systems.
I can remember, of course, clubs that we played in, and, I'm sitting there hitting my bass drum, and the floor felt like it was dropping like 5 inches every time I hit the bass drum. And it just, the whole venue moved with the sound and the music and stuff like that. And
well, your amp rack was, for the PA system, was the heaviest thing, period, on the truck or on the stage,
right?
But arguably that's why those systems sounded better.
Yeah,
because when you have your built-in amplifier to the cabinets these days, that's amazing technology, and they're light.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's a different overall sound. And a level of efficiency.
Yeah.
And it sounds thinner.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't move the air like like the old stuff or the tube stuff does, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with mic and drums versus triggers and things like that.
Yeah.
But some of the trigger stuff does, but then you get the digital sounding stuff and not the real, acoustic sound of the drums with good, compression on it or good EQ and things like that. But yeah, it's definitely changed. I mean, it's just like being in the store. It's amps right now. It got all these great amps, and especially the small packages. With the 15-watt amps and things like that really put out a good sound. I think you got one of them split. Yours does 32 to 15,
it does.
and you don't even use it.
A lot of times I
32,
go into the 15 because if we're in a smaller place, it's just overkill. We're micing it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's going through the PA. So I'm on the 15 watt and I'm on maybe 1.5 for my volume.
Yeah.
So that's definitely different from 1988.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I think it's a lot of differences from back then, but
also advertising. Remember, we go flyers. Let's flyer everybody. Flyer. Here's a flyer.
Everything's a flyer on Facebook.
And now it's like
pop an ad on Facebook and have 100 of your best friends show up.
Right.
But I can remember. Everything was done grassroots back then. I can remember. Getting those packs of flyers and heading down to wherever we were going and putting them on telephone poles in every car and going through the mall and putting them on cars and
sign of the times
anywhere you could go. But it works. If you flyered, you packed your venue, especially if they didn't know who you were, and that's what we always used to make us bigger than what we were. Heart recording artists and all the stuff that we put on the stuff. Place that we did a demo, but hey,
and nowadays when you do it, you get a community note or a fact check underneath.
Right.
I know it. That's right.
We're gonna fact check this information.
That's it. But,
and the idea of the gear being different, and now it's in the venues and whatnot. But I think the biggest difference as far as where music is playing is that it's the reason I brought it up was that live music can be found now in venues that in the 80s we would have never thought of being a music venue.
No.
Right.
Essentially restaurants.
No. But we didn't have the breweries and stuff. Of course, the microbrew thing has gotten really, really, huge over the last 20 years. So there's not, we didn't have that back then. You had a few, but it was, now there's,
a lot of breweries,
lots of breweries, and they're having a lot of live music.
Well, they can get around because there are no bars in Virginia.
Yeah.
Because we're a Commonwealth, and everything's tethered to food sales.
Yeah,
and it was always kind of a joke anyway. And the Peabody's down at Virginia Beach had a 24-hour open taco bar.
Right.
Just so they could charge, and they put the coverage charge as you having bought food.
Yeah,
so they could mitigate the liquor sales.
Yeah, well,
but breweries don't have to adhere to that.
Yeah, well, I think there was a difference between beer sales and liquor sales.
Yeah, it was.
But it was, and I think somebody told me one time it wasn't as much as you sold, but you had to buy.
Right.
So I remember.
It's a weird ratio.
Well, I remember the one club we played in Richmond. Their big thing, they just had hot dogs.
Yeah, that's right.
It.
Yeah,
there was only hot dogs there. That's all they had. And, we bought a lot of hot dogs. Sold them cheap. And that way
we have hot dogs, and we got hot dogs.
That's right.
Get your hot dogs and your rock and roll here.
Yeah, I know it. And we all have bad backs from the big scoop cabinets.
Man, definitely.
Not me.
The big mixing boards.
I didn't move it.
We moved it. We made trips.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
for sure. It was insane.
We were doing CrossFit before CrossFit was a thing.
Oh, and back to right. But back to the house gig too. Whether like a house gig being a permanent gig when I was contracted for an entire summer. Even still, we don't have any more. Even locally, back in the 80s and even into the 90s, you would get a weekend at a place.
Yeah.
You'd have a Friday and a Saturday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that never happens anymore, man.
Yeah.
Totally.
And back, in 90 and 91 when I first started getting out on the road when I was a kid, you would play, I was telling AC, you'd be in Myrtle Beach at the 2001 from Tuesday to Saturday at midnight. Those week-long stints seem to be gone.
Right, right.
And those were pretty common fare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's changed too because my dad was a musician back in the late 50s, early 60s. in the 60s. So they would have, you know, they'd be a house band for a month at a place.
Yeah.
They'd be playing, you know, and they had supper clubs back then too. So you'd have, you know, they'd start off playing your cocktail music and stuff like that, and then break into rock and roll later on after everybody got kind of liquored up and got on the dance floor and all that good stuff. But
Girl from Ipanema
Girl from
to
Ipanema,
Medina.
yeah, exactly. That's it. So so I guess we'll wrap it up. That's this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and wait till next week for a new episode of
Rock Talk.
And Volume 11 Music. Have a great
11.
one. Peace.
This has been an episode of Volume 11 Rock Talk Podcast, brought to you by Volume 11 Music.